Now, over the next few weeks, we're talking ballots on 5 Live. It's a new series touring round the country, speaking to voters, finding out what issues are important to them, and then investigating them, of course. You can watch all the episodes online. You can search BBC 5 Live on YouTube and Facebook. Tonight, it's episode 2. Here's Callum MacDonald.
Hello, Stephen. Well, we've returned from a couple of days in lovely Luton, where our next key issue ahead of the general election was decided by Alanat, and she is worried about
homeless people. There's a lot of people like around every corner basically just sleeping there. Like some of them have even got tents out, like sleeping in the cold weather, in the rain. It is quite frustrating to see.
Alanat Daka works in a primary school in Luton, and we met her wandering around Luton's indoor market. Now, Luton actually is a homeless black spot, really, in England. One night last autumn, Luton Council counted 76 people sleeping rough on the streets. And one thing actually to bear in mind when we're talking about homelessness is actually how complex an issue it is to define. We had a bit of a nightmare, to be honest, working out exactly who is classed as homeless, and the way numbers are recorded, even within nations and regions across the UK, can differ quite greatly. So while we often think of homeless individuals as those sleeping on the streets, and it definitely includes them, statutory homelessness, or homelessness in the legal definition, includes anyone who doesn't have accommodation that they have a legal right to occupy, which is accessible and physically available to them, and which it would be reasonable for them to continue to live in. So people living in temporary accommodation, including B&Bs, hostels, refuges, and even people who are sofa surfing, are technically homeless. And you can be considered homeless if, for example, remaining in your home puts you at risk of violence. But even if someone is considered to be homeless by the legal definition, they may not actually be owed a duty to be accommodated by their local authority. If, for example, they are a single adult with no dependents who does not otherwise fall into a vulnerable group that is considered to be a priority. Those vulnerable groups, those priority groups, they include people aged 16 or 17 and those aged 18 to 20 who were previously in care, as well as vulnerable people. So that can include those who have spent time in care, custody, or the armed forces, or those who have had to leave their homes because of that threat of violence that we mentioned a minute ago. So, as tricky as these stats are to pin down and as quite a broad definition as homelessness is, we got to it, and here is what we found: that 5 families are being made homeless in England every hour of the day, and that is according to the Government Department for Communities and Local Government. In 2015 to 2016, 115,000 households applied to their council for homelessness assistance. That was a rise of 11% since 2010 to 2011. And of those, 58,000 were accepted as homeless and in priority need, which is up 6% on the year before. So, Alanat's concerns with homelessness, she obviously lives in Luton, where it's a big issue, but this is a big issue right across the UK, and so we got to it.
Well, the Birmingham City Councillor, Sharon Thompson, found herself homeless at 16. She's now the council's ambassador for homelessness. Hello to you, Sharon.
Hi.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tell us your story then. What happened when you were 16?
I mean, when I was 16, like most young people who become homeless, I had a family breakdown. So I found myself in a situation. I was quite fortunate that I only ever had to sleep on the streets for one night. And then I sort of went along to what was classed as what we called the Link Centre, and they finally put me in a hostel. So I stayed with a hostel that I'm now supporting. Now I'm an adult and out of that situation, but even then there was times when I was what is classed now as sofa surfing, and I did stay with a friend for a period of time.
What was it like?
The night when I actually slept out in the city centre, that was probably one of the most frightening situations for me, and I never actually slept that night. Not something I'd like to experience again. I couldn't cope with it. I actually found myself, I went and found the Link, and they were very reassuring. I think at the time when I became homeless, in your mind you create all these sort of horror stories of what it's going to be like living in a hostel. So when I got to the Link Centre, I was really, really nervous and frightened, but they made me feel really reassured. And when I went to the hostel accommodation, again, I was assigned a key worker. They were very supportive, and they supported me. And actually, I say to people, they actually invested in me to enable me to be able to learn skills, because at the age of 16, I didn't know about budgeting. I didn't know about shopping. There was a lot of different things that I didn't know that you needed to know about running a household and being surviving.
Imagine if you had been like that for many years, sleeping out, sleeping rough.
Yes, and I know that one thing I say to people who do that, they are they do become very resilient. A story that I'll often share, and I'll share it with you tonight, is that when I was living in the hostels, there was a girl whose name was also Sharon. We shared a room next door to each other, and unfortunately for her, she continued in that lifestyle, and I still see her on a regular basis. She's begging, she's in a dirty quilt, and I look at her and I think to myself, my goodness, that could have been me.
That must be quite surreal for you then, that comparison that's in front of you now, that what could have been you.
It is very surreal, but one of the things that pushed me to go into the position that I'm in at the moment was that my mantra is not to be a victim of life issues, but to be victorious through it. And I made a sort of pledge to people that I knew who become homeless that I would try and do something, try and advocate in some way. And then through the role that I've got now as the ambassador for homelessness in Birmingham, I often find myself speaking to people who sleep rough, and they actually call me Shaz, and they say she's my support worker, but we have a really good relationship with them, and I'm able to talk to them and actually get to the bottom of some of the things that they're going through and advocate on their behalf, because there are a lot of complex issues when it comes to homelessness.
Let's speak to John tonight as well. John, you were homeless earlier this year. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
Hello, John. What happened? You're 63.
I returned from a country which is not within the EU. So when I come back to the UK, I wasn't entitled to any help, JSA or anything else for 3 months.
And you had no savings?
No, I was caught out in... I was in the Philippines. I was caught out in Yolanda. There's super typhoon, so that literally wiped me out on everything. Sort of lost everything there. I even borrowed the money for the plane fare to get back to the UK to restart again. But when I come back, unbeknown to me, 3 months, not entitled to any help whatsoever from the government.
Not even the basics to get you through life?
No, nothing at all.
So what did you do?
It was literally... So, and I was back in November. So I had November, December, January. I wasn't entitled to apply for JSA, Job Seekers Allowance, or anything until February.
So what did you do?
Well, if it wasn't for the help of a charity, Noah Enterprises, I wouldn't have had anything to eat. And what I used to do for my own personal bits and pieces was literally beg on the street, sleep in car parks. Used to go around with a couple of others that were also homeless, so we sort of had as one or two of us, because you can't sleep, because you always got one eye open in case of trouble.
And how long were you on the street for?
Near enough March before because then I could apply for JSA, which then the council won't help you. If you're not receiving any benefits at all, the council just turn around and go, "Oh, you're not in receipt of benefits. We can't help you." So it wasn't until I started to claim, and then through Noah's Enterprise, that they have a couple of landlords, I was able to get a small room. But that wasn't until my benefits and all the rest of it started.
So you slept in the street for months?
Yeah, over the winter. over the Christmas, over the winter.
I remember
Now
how
it's
cold
never-
it was last year. How do you do that? How do you protect yourself? What's between your skin and the cold ground?
Cardboard. Literally cardboard. And with Noah's, they've got a night shelter, but it only opens when the temperature is below zero for 3 consecutive days. Then it opens for a while. But once the temperature goes back up, they close it and then reopen it again once the temperature goes down. So that was sleeping on the floor in a church. Other than that, it was outside, cardboard and sleeping bag and an old duvet or whatever you can get just to keep it, try and keep warm.
What does that do, John, to your sense of self?
Well, I didn't let it get me personally. I didn't let it get myself down too much. It was grinding. It was very grinding through the day. Because worst part of that was actually then having set my mind that I'd have to sit and beg for some money. I smoke. I don't drink. I don't take drugs, but I do smoke. So even for my cigarettes, the only way I could afford them was to actually sit down at one of the car parks at the railway station or something and actually beg for money. But once I got enough of me tobacco to last me a couple of days, then I'd leave because I just couldn't, in my mind, I just couldn't stay there for any longer. Others that
Some
I
people
know,
listening to this might not have sympathy for someone that isn't, you weren't begging for food or water, the essentials. You were begging for cigarettes.
well, yeah, for a bit of money, for a little bit of something. Most, though, that are out on the streets today, they're begging for money basically for alcohol or drugs. Me, if it wasn't for Noah's, I would have to be begging to buy food, because even the food bank, unless you're in receipt of some sort of, or entitled to benefits, it's difficult to even get any food out of there.
How dangerous is it? Were you ever attacked? Like, how do you keep yourself safe if you're on the street and these people in the middle of the night walking around, some of them decent, some of them so desperate that they might do anything?
Yeah, that's why you sort of, with me, was sort of like make friends and sort of keep together. That's why I said you'd have to sleep with one eye open, so anything going. To keep fit, you're basically walking around. If it got too cold, you was basically walking around the streets just to keep warm.
Did you make any lifelong friends on the streets?
Yes, I've got some lifelong friends. One, Colin. He's actually been on the streets for 20 odd years, 19, 20 years. He's actually recently got a room. So, and from what he used to do with his drinking and that has all now sort of died. So he has a drink, but he has it in his room. He's not interfering with anybody. He's not causing problems out in the street. It's actually changed his life. And he's a very intelligent man.
Well, we've heard that Luton has a huge problem with homelessness. We'll talk about that in just a second. First, of course, there's an election campaign going on. So what have the parties told us about what they plan to do about homelessness? Here's Callum.
Well, the Department for Communities and Local Government say the main reason that people become homeless is that they're kicked out of their rented homes for reasons they can't actually control. But politicians, they can help out. So we went to them with Ellenat's concerns around homelessness. The Lib Dems say they'd bring back housing benefit for 18 to 21-year-olds and support homelessness prevention measures. Labour, they want to build more affordable homes and set aside 4,000 homes for people who have particularly been sleeping rough. The SNP say the Scottish Government, their Scottish Government, has some of the strongest housing rights in the world, and they are taking action to help people find and keep a home. UKIP say homelessness is made worse by the EU's free movement of people, and sensible and fair migration policies will actually help to reduce the problem. They say they'll prioritise helping ex-servicemen and women. The Conservatives, they talk money. They say they've invested £500 million to prevent homelessness, and that they're supporting projects to stop people sleeping rough and support those who are already on the street. Obviously, it goes without saying that the Conservatives have been in government, so for them to say they've invested money is a lot more straightforward than for the other parties who simply have to make promises. So, we've heard from the politicians who've given their response to Alanat. Let's remember, though, that homelessness isn't just a problem in the UK. It's actually going up right across Europe, apart from in Finland. Famous for Lapland, and it's the home of Santa Claus, of course, and now it's getting a reputation for actually fixing the problem of homelessness. It's the only country in Europe where the number of homeless people has actually gone down in recent years. It's all but eradicated rough sleeping, of course, one of those measures of homelessness, and housed a significant number of homeless people. Now, Juha Kakinen is chief executive of the Y Foundation, which provides 16,300 low-cost flats to homeless people in Finland.
What the homeless people are lacking is a proper apartment. So we start by giving them a flat of their own, rental flat with their own rental contract, the same rights and the same obligations like everybody else have. And then if there's a need for support, that's provided, because many homeless people don't need any support, but if they need support, it's important that you also provide it. So you are not just giving a flat, you are also giving the support if that's needed. Several reasons, of course, lack of affordable housing, economic reasons, divorce, etc. Normal things that happen in human life. But of course, it's true that if you are homeless for a very long time, it's very possible that some problems appear also. So it's very important to stop the homelessness as soon as possible. As long as there's one single homeless, there's one single homeless too many. And in Finland, we have the definitions that so that most of our homeless people actually are people living temporarily with friends and relatives, so they are not roofless people. We don't have street homelessness, and I think that's the major achievement. But we will go on ending to stop homelessness completely in Finland in the coming years.
So the solution, which is setting Finland apart, they give people a permanent home as soon as they become homeless. And for your information, that now means that there is just one hostel in the entire country.
Right, Callum, thank you very much indeed. Let's speak to Jim O'Connor, who's the chief executive of a homeless charity in Luton called Noah Enterprise. Hello, Jim.
Good evening, Stephen.
Hello, Jim. So we heard John talking there about your enterprise, about your establishment and your charity and how it helped him at his time of need.
It's a privilege to be able to do that, and delighted to be able to do it for John and so many others. What we attempt to do is a combination of support, part of which is what John referred to, which is primary care, food, clothing, and opportunity to clean up. And that's supplemented by finding accommodation for people where they're in receipt of benefits, helping them to get the benefits that they're entitled to, providing medical services on site, but adding to that as well, Stephen, by looking to the future for people beyond being homeless through training and work experience.
From what John was telling me there, it just sounds wrong that someone coming from anywhere into this country is entitled to nothing for the first 3 months. That sounds wrong.
That does not sound at all right. Seems to me very hard to justify, and particularly in John's situation, a man who had worked all of his life, who had paid national insurance contributions, and then when he needed the support for which he was paying those contributions, it wasn't there. It's hard to justify that.
My goodness. How many people do you help in any given year, Jim?
The number is growing, Stephen. It was 500 back in 2014. It was 700 last year. Already in the first 5 months of this year is exceeding 400. So we're going towards 900, I would say, this year.
Who's funding it?
It comes from a variety of sources, one of which is what we do ourselves. We have a social business where we trade in furniture and white goods. That also gives people the chance of work experience. Other funding, we get a grant from the local authority. We have contracts with government. We're currently working on a contract to support migrants who are homeless. And we're looking to do that through either getting them into a job or constructively helping to reconnect them with their place of origin. We even get a grant, would you believe, from the Irish government.
Well, Jim, it's been nice talking to you tonight, and thank you very, very much indeed for speaking to us, and to you, John. Thank you, sir, and of course to Sharon tonight. It's 27 minutes now past 11. Let's get the latest on this incredible story